and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Bard's College of Glamour class specialization from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass as well as explain and set up the various features that your character is going to gain. The Bards of this particular subclass would have to originate from the Feywild in order to really be able to acquire the skills needed to gain the proficiencies they need for these class features. And I don't mean skill proficiencies, but just general knowledge and understanding. However, it is feasible that your character would have discovered someone who used to live within the Feywild, so as a result, you could use them as a tutor to be able to gain this particular class specialization as your College of Learning. These bards, though, do excel in being able to charm patrons who have heard and watched their performances, and will use that to their benefit or to elevate those who are kind of feeling a little bit on the down. But as the bards of this particular subclass gain experience in their knowledge, they will also learn how to command others to do their bidding, as well as to inspire reverence in your bard's persona, gaining control over dire situations during battle. So with that, let's go ahead and drop our bard class on top of the information sheet here and choose College of Glamour from this particular list. And right away, the first feature that your character is going to acquire is called Mantle of Inspiration, and it is gained when you choose your class specialization. This feature is going to allow your character to make use of their inspiration features and create a wondrous appearance that can add temporary hit points to a number of creatures equal to your character's charisma modifier, as long as they are within 60 feet of your character and can see your character. Additionally, when a character gains these hit points, they are also able to use a reaction at the exact same time and without penalty to move up to their movement speed and distance without provoking any sort of attack of opportunity. However, the total number of hit points that your character can apply to a single character or creature within reach is 5 at level 3. But as your character reaches level 5, they will be able to add 8 hit points, and 11 hit points when your character reaches level 10, and finally 14 hit points when your character reaches level 15. But what this does mean is that if you had a charisma modifier of +4, you would be able to, at level 3, add 5 hit points to 4 creatures within 60 feet of you. So how do we set this up? Well, the first thing that you're going to want to do is add this to your Actions tab, and then set it up to be under the College of Glamour. We don't really have to modify anything here because we already have the temporary hit points set up and ready to go. But when your character reaches level 5, you'll want to be sure to increase this to 8 temporary hit points. When your character hits level 10, you want to make sure that that is 11. When your character hits level 14, you want to make sure, level 15, you want to make sure that that's 14 hit points. And all you will have to do is click this little magnifying glass next to the effect and simply modify this value of 5 to be either 8, 11, or 14, depending on the level that you're adjusting it to. So how do you make use of this? Well, your character is most likely going to be in a combat situation, so just let me quickly add our character to the combat tracker. Okay. And what we can potentially do is target the ape and the wolf as quote-unquote our example characters. Now, generally this is going to be a humanoidal based character who's part of your party, but for the purposes of this example, I'm just simply using 2 quote-unquote friendly creatures. And I suppose it could be a friendly creature as well, now that I think about it. But you would tick off the fact that you're using a bardic inspiration point, and then you would actually click on this to give each of them 5 temporary hit points. Now you'll notice that the ape already had 15 hit points, so they didn't get a quote-unquote increase in the total number of temporary hit points that they have. They kept the higher value. When it comes to the wolf, however, they had a temporary hit point value of 2, if I'm not mistaken, or none at all, I can't recall. But regardless of that, they now have the 5 hit points that you have granted them. And as long as your character has points available for their bardic inspiration, your character will be able to make use of this particular feature. In addition to Mantle of Inspiration, your character is also going to acquire a feature called Enthralling Performance at level 3. And this gives your character to make use of the Fey magic that they have gained as part of their training through the College of Glamour and make their performance more seductive or awe-inspiring. When your character sings, recites poetry, or dances for 60 seconds or more, their performance is going to trigger a wisdom saving throw in a number of humanoids equal to your character's charisma modifier, and as long as those humanoids are within 60 feet of your character and can see and hear your character. And you may have noticed that I said humanoids. The feature is restricting your ability to apply this particular effect or trigger that wisdom saving throw to a very specific type of creature within Dungeons and Dragons. And in this particular case, that type is humanoids. That means dwarves, elves, or any bipedal creature who is potentially able to see and hear you. If those humanoids happen to fail their saving throw, they are now going to be charmed by your character, and they will do everything in their power to convince others that your character should be idolized. However, they will generally try to avoid violence if possible, unless they're already sort of inclined to do so. Meaning that you would not be able to use the quote-unquote charm to start a brawl of some kind. But you could potentially use your charm to potentially stop a brawl that's incoming. And what I mean by that is that you can use your charmed patrons, if you will, to be able to interfere in a particular combat situation to try to reduce the tensions and eliminate that combat situation if possible, without any combat. Now, having said that, there is the aspect that if they're already inclined to fight on your behalf, they will still fight on your behalf. The charm effect will remain in place for up to 1 hour unless, for some reason, your patrons who are charmed have taken any amount of damage or you have attacked one of them. Additionally, if you happen to attack or do damage, or both, to one of that particular humanoid's alloys, you will also break the charm effect on that particular humanoid. And if they happen to have been successful during their saving throw, you'll be able to sort of skate through and they won't realize that you attempted to actually charm them. And they'll essentially have just ignored your performance, is what it comes down to. Now, once your character has used this feature, they will not be able to use it again until you have completed a long or short rest for your character. So this means we need to add this to our Actions tab. And we do that by making sure we are on our Actions tab, dropping it into place. Make sure that we have the College of Glamour selected and drop it into place. I'm also going to make sure that because we're setting up a saving throw here, oops, that should be base again, that we're setting this up to work off of your charisma modifier. And that will ensure that as your character gains any modification points here in your charisma, the wisdom saving throw will also increase over time. The last thing we have to do before we actually consider the setup, though, is set up its limitations. It requires that your character make use of a short or a long rest in order to be able to use this feature again. And you can only use it once before you have to execute that rest. So you want to go to preparation, put a 1 here, and then set that to rest. Now when you go through and use it, it'll disappear from your Actions tab until you've completed that rest. And there's really nothing else that we have to do because we already have the saving throw set up and we already have the effect here for those who happen to fail their saves. You can just click that and it will automatically apply to those who remain targeted. So how do you actually use this feature within a combat situation or in general? Well, it comes down to who you're fighting against. Most of the creatures in this particular combat tracker are not going to be of the classification of humanoid, because some might be humanoid, but they're classified as undead, like the zombie 1, 2, and 3 that are there. The white is essentially the equivalent of a spirit or a ghost, even though it might have arms and legs. It's technically not humanoidal, it's undead. A succubus, well, that could be classified as an unknown. But in the case of Dungeons and Dragons, the creature type actually has to define humanoid as part of the actual type. So I've intentionally shared over the character sheets for the Succubus and the Bugbear Chief. And what we're looking for is the type this particular creature is. And in this particular case, this is not a humanoid. They happen to be a shape changer. They tend to take humanoid form, but they are in fact, as their base type, a fiend. Whereas the Bugbear is classified as a humanoid. That is their creature type. And this is what this spell will limit its capabilities to act on. And yes, I did use a spell there, because essentially what you're doing is you're enthralling your audience. You're quote-unquote casting a spell on them. You're using your fey magic to enthrall them, to charm them. That's why I'm saying a spell, even though you're technically using a performance to do this. So back to our combat tracker here, you can see that our bard's party is very heavily outnumbered. Of all of the creatures in this group, the only one that might be quote-unquote charmable would be this Bugbear. Now it's the bard's turn. Perfect time to try to execute a performance. So I'm going to drop a saving throw onto this particular Bugbear. They failed. That means that that Bugbear is now charmed. The problem is this. Technically, your performance is supposed to last 60 seconds. What that means is that for the first 9 rounds of combat, you will be doing nothing but executing a performance. So on the 10th round of combat, that's when you could actually potentially charm that Bugbear. That's the limitation of this. It's really designed to be used in non-combat situations, but it can be used in combat situations if it must. So you as a player essentially have 2 choices. Get involved in combat if you're in a combat situation, or stand there for 9 rounds reciting some form of performance on the hopes that you might be able to charm that one Bugbear to be able to help you out. Regardless of whether the rest of the party happens to be alive or not. I'd just like to point out there is a dragon in this party. But that's how you would use this in a combat situation. Outside of combat, you would be asked to have those characters roll saving throws, and then you would apply a charmed effect onto any who happen to fail. For simplicity's sake, the Dungeon Master might throw those particular targets that you're trying to charm into the combat tracker so that you can target them, execute the rolls, and then apply the effects if it happened to be required. When your character reaches level 6, they will gain the feature called Mantle of Majesty. And what this feature gives your character the ability to do is make use of the command spell without expending any spell slots. And when you do use this particular feature, your character's appearance will sort of change so that they appear unearthly beautiful. Now, it could be argued that if a character is playing an evil bard, it may be that they become unearthly hideous. It's entirely up to that particular player. The change of appearance is going to remain in place for 1 minute, or until you decide that your character is going to stop concentrating on it, or it is generally disrupted in some way, shape, or form, i.e. your character is becoming incapacitated. But as long as this feature is active, your character will gain the ability to cast that command spell as a bonus action during each of their turns for a total of 10 rounds. If you happen to have a number of patrons that are already charmed, and you make use of this command spell to command one of them to do something, they will automatically fail their saving throw. But those who aren't charmed will require a wisdom-based saving throw that is equal to your charisma modifier plus 8 plus your proficiency bonus. In either case, any who happen to fail their saving throw will attempt to complete the order that your character is issued, but there is a catch. It can only be a single word as per the command spell. This word could be something like attack, defend, delay, or anything else that makes sense. Additionally, it can only affect one particular creature at a time, as long as they are not classified as undead. The other limitation is that they will be unable to do anything if they don't understand the language that your character is speaking. Another limitation is that they will not be able to obey the command if it's going to cause direct harm to them in any way, shape, or form. For example, if you are commanding one of your patrons to jump because they are at the edge of a cliff and your intent is for them to jump off, if that fall is going to hurt them seriously or even potentially kill them, they won't do it. But if you are commanding them to attack and their inclination is to try to make sure that you get to where you're going and a fight is required and they're inclined to do so, they may fight in that particular situation. But if they are fighting against a creature that they know and absolutely know will instantly wipe them out, they won't do it. However, the DM is going to rule in that particular situation, or most of those examples, because they're going to understand and know what that particular patron or creature would consider as being harmful to themselves. So don't be surprised if a creature that you have commanded doesn't do anything, because the DM has decided that that's going to be considered harmful to that particular creature in a way that they would not do it. This feature does have a usage limitation in the sense that once you've used it, your character is going to have to complete a long rest before they can use it again. So this means we need to add it to our Actions tab. So all we have to do is drop this into place, make sure that we have College of Glamour set up as the group, and then create a use. So once, and it is a long rest, so we don't need to worry about that. And finally, all you have to do is pop this open to be able to gain access to the spell called command, and then read through its description and execute what it is that you need to do. You can, however, add command to your spell list. That way it's already there so that you don't need to worry about it. And make sure that this particular saving throw is set up to use your charisma modifier. So it's going to be charisma. And that'll ensure that your spellcasting capability is always going to be set. Now, by default, spells are already set up to use your charisma, so you don't need to worry about it. You just want to go through and set it up if you're kind of concerned that it won't. So you can leave it as group DC. And that's it. The last feature that your character is going to gain is called Unbreakable Majesty, and this will happen when your character reaches level 14 in the Bard class. With this feature, your Bard will permanently gain a transcendental appearance, making the character appear more beautiful yet fierce. It'll also grant a bonus action that allows your character to magically change their presence to match their otherworldly appearance for a period of 60 seconds. During this time frame, or essentially the equivalent of 10 rounds, any creature that attempts to attack your Bard will need to make a charisma-based saving throw against your character's own spell save DC. If they fail that saving throw, they will be unable to attack your character and must choose another target if they're able to do so. Otherwise, they will end up wasting their attack action for that particular turn. But if that creature manages to succeed on their saving throw, they can still attack your character, but they will gain disadvantage on all of its saving throws against any spells that you happen to throw at it when your next turn comes around. And once again, this feature has a usage limitation in the sense that your character must complete a short or a long rest before they will be able to use this ability again after they have used it. This also means that we need to be able to add this to the Actions tab. So let's drop it into place, copy the College of Glamour, paste that into place, and then just quickly pop this open to make sure that the Charisma dice check here automatically updates to the correct value. There's nothing else we need to do. It's already set up for us and ready to go. The only thing we have to do is change the number of uses we can do. And this is one use, and it is short or long rest, which means we need a rest tag as opposed to a daily tag here. Now, if we use this particular capability, boom, it'll go away until we complete a short or long rest. And that sets everything up that we need to configure for the Unbreakable Majesty feature. So in conclusion, it's nice to see that the College of Glamour is a great class for crowd control or getting out of sticky situations, but it should be considered a rarity if selected. Now, my logic behind that is that it can actually be quite tricky to track down someone who's from the Fey world if your own character is not already from that particular world. And those that do manage to be discovered have been generally expelled or kicked out from that particular world for some reason. So they may not be overly cooperative, if you will, when it comes to actually training someone. However, that does not mean that it's impossible to track one down, and I highly recommend that someone try this subclass as it can be quite fun to play. especially for someone who has a highly artistic mindset. However, this does bring us to the end of this particular subclass's list of features, and thus the end of where we can go with the bard for this subclass. I hope you found it informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.